Good day to everyone joining us, and welcome to today's X Talks webinar. Today's talk is entitled Revolutionizing Prefilled Injectables Through Innovative Technology. My name is Sonia Hunt, and it's my pleasure to be your X Talks moderator for today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes. This presentation includes a Q&A session with our speakers. This webinar is designed to be interactive, and webinars work best when you're involved. So please feel free to submit questions and comments for our speakers throughout this presentation by using the questions chat box, and we'll try to attend to your questions during the Q&A session. Now, this chat box is located in the control panel, and that's found on the right-hand side of your screen. If you require assistance, please contact me at any time by sending me a message using that chat panel. At this time, all participants are in listen-only mode. Please note that this event will be recorded and made available to you for future streaming on xtalks.com. At this point in time, I'd like to thank AppEject, who developed the content for this presentation. AppEject is a global medical technology company creating the future of pharmaceutical injections. Their mission is to provide products with superior convenience, quality, and safety of pre-filled syringes at the manufacturing, scale, and cost efficiency of multi-dose formats, regardless of manufacturing volume. Their platform brings together two globally trusted manufacturing technologies: blow fill seal, aseptic filling, and high precision plastic injection molding. The promise of their platform can be seen in their first device, a single-dose pre-filled injector, is designed to enhance commercial markets, enabling a wider range of healthcare professionals to administer necessary medications and vaccines to patients. Now it's my pleasure to introduce your speakers for today's webinar. And first, I'd like to introduce you to Tony Wasilewski. He's a Vice President of Pharmaceutical Development Services. Tony is career spanning 25 years of expertise in the pharmaceutical industry. Tony has spent much of his career focused on the development and launch of generic injectables. Tony held positions in a range of functional areas in his career, including 503B outsourcing, new product development, aseptic manufacturing, and R&D. Tony holds an MS in Product Design and Development from Northwestern University and a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry from Northern Illinois University. And next, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Lauren Greenberg. She's a Vice President of Device Development, and she brings over 15 years of pharmaceutical and device development industry experience to her role, focusing on the delivery of product designs and characterization of data and methods, while providing strategic and technical direction for the combination product pipeline and bearing primary responsibility for development, verification, validation, and advancement of AppEject's product portfolio. She also heads development of novel tools and processes to deliver on future product platforms and licensee needs. Now, before I pass the mic and the control over to our first speaker, Tony, we do have our first poll question for our audience members to engage in, and I'm going to launch it now. So you should see it appear on your screen. And there it is. So this is done in real time, so your participation is strongly encouraged and very much appreciated. And the question that we have for you is, which pain point is currently the most disrupted to your business? So all you have to do is click on any of the below options, and your options are supply chain leads, time, cost of starting materials, FDA drug review timelines and challenges, market price erosion, or other. And for the other, if you can just put that in the chat box, other, if that's one of your selection. Okay, perfect. That looks like it is the majority of our audience have cast their vote. I'm just going to leave it open for a few more seconds, as I believe we have a couple more people there who have not cast their vote. So if you can go ahead and do so now. And as a reminder, you can go ahead and pick on any of the below, and if one of them is other, please put the other in the chat box. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in our first poll question. I'm now going to close the polls, and let's take a look at the results. Okay, so in our audience today, we have 63% that said supply chain lead times, while 13% said cost of starting materials, 25% said FDA drug review timelines and challenges, and with 0% picking market price erosion and other. So thank you everyone for participating in our first poll question. And now with that, it's my pleasure to pass the mic and the controls over to our first speaker, Tony. So Tony, when you're ready, you may begin.
Thank you, Sonia, for that wonderful introduction and the support from X Talks to organize this webinar. Also, thanks to the audience for making time to join us today. We know everyone is very busy, but we're hoping that you really learned something new today. That was an interesting poll question, and I think we have one more at the end, so we'll save the discussion on that just prior to the Q&A. So let's move on and go through the agenda. So in today's webinar, we'll be discussing revolutionizing prefilled injectables through innovative technology. We will learn how advancements in blow-fill seal, and Lauren and I in this presentation will probably use the acronym BFS. So BFS and injection molding has allowed AppEject to create this unique opportunity with prefilled injectables. We will also touch on how the industry has evolved based on changing needs and market demands. My colleague Lauren will take us into some technical discussions with our own development approach, as well as some of our experiences. Lastly, we will share some key considerations when developing a drug-device combination product. So for part one, before we get into talking about the AppEject prefilled injector, I wanted to spend a little time and talk about our company. We're a younger company, so I think it's important to educate the audience. So our mission is to make injectable medicines safe and accessible to everyone. And to support this very important mission, our company has been organized as a public benefit company. A public benefit company allows the company board members to make decisions not only based on profit, but also when there's a public benefit need, right? So as they're making those decisions, they keep that in mind. We have about 80 employees at 3 US locations. The first location is Connecticut, that's our corporate office. Then we have a technology development center in Orlando, Florida. And finally, we have a device development team that's located in North Carolina. And what's missing on this slide, we do have another group in Europe, and they're part of our field research network and design team. They support us quite a bit as we develop new products. So as was mentioned, we are a medical technology company, and we've partnered with CDMOs in the US and Europe, where we have deployed our own proprietary technology at their locations. And lastly, what's unique is that we've partnered with the US government to create a distributed manufacturing network to support the government and the population for any potential future bioemergency responses. So, AppEject platform, it consists of 2 technologies, blow-fill seal and injection molding. Blow-fill seal has been around commercially for over 75 years, and you've probably seen it in your first aid kit with eye drops, even inhalation bottles, and even soda bottles as well. It really started out, blow-fill seal technology, with non-sterile products, and it has slowly evolved into sterile products and now into parenteral injections. Blow-fill seal is a high-speed, efficient, very cost-competitive process due to the very few materials required to blow, fill, and seal that container. And more recently, it's been recognized by the FDA as an advanced aseptic process due to the very little human intervention required in the process. So the blow, fill, seal container is being form filled and sealed in a very small space. It's also a single continuous process with very, very low particulate generation. Each commercial scale blow, fill, seal machine can produce approximately 25,000 units per hour and on a 24/7 basis, about 15 million units a month. So instead of me trying to describe how this works, a visual is always better. So I'm going to ask Sonia to play a 30-second video that's narrated by our co-founder, Jay Walker. Thank you, Sonia.
The AppEject platform brings together two globally trusted manufacturing technologies. The first is blow, fill, seal, known by its initials BFS. BFS is a highly scalable and efficient aseptic drug packaging process, where rows of plastic containers are first created from liquid plastic and then aseptically filled and sealed in one continuous process at rates up to 25,000 doses per hour.
Great video. Now I'm going to hand it over to Lauren.
Thanks so much, Tony. So looking at the other part of the AppEject injector, the second is a precision molded needle hub that is assembled to a cannula to form a hypodermic needle. AppEject has partnered with the #2 cannula supplier in the world to mold, assemble, package, and then finally sterilize our needles. Plastic injection molding is not new. It dates back over 100 years and actually was the response to an innovation challenge to find a suitable alternative to ivory for billiard balls or pool balls. So celluloid was found to be an acceptable alternate material to create those type of hard textured products. Synthetic plastics then took off following that. The innovation of the injection molding machine did start shortly thereafter. So hypodermic needles and syringes, though, specifically did date back even further than that into the mid-1800s. One of the first documented uses was to inject morphine as a painkiller. Of course, back then, the systems were made mostly of glass and metal. So going into the system as a whole, I have some prototypes that I will be able to show today. As Tony talked about earlier, the BFS container is right here. And this is a hypodermic needle that is meant to fit on the BFS container. This system is assembled using a single push to connect motion. So the wings that are on the BFS container and the wing slots on our device are simply pushed together to form that injector. This action is performed by a healthcare practitioner or professional just prior to injection. The HCP will then remove the needle shield and basically insert this needle into a patient. I'm going to use a cup today to catch the liquid instead of my keyboard. And then using fingers, basically squeezing the device together to insert and inject the fluid into a patient before removing the needle. So Tony is now going to tell us about why some of these attempts have not been made before to create this type of system.
Awesome, thank you. So yeah, we often get that question, why hasn't this been done before? Why is this novel? Well, basically, we've been able to overcome two complexities. The first challenge is connecting a soft plastic container, as Lauren demonstrated, to a hard plastic needle and the hub connector. So we've spent years designing and testing various configurations to ultimately create a high performance injector through the design and mating process of those two pieces. Secondly, BFS, the process itself, generates a lot of heat. In the process, which you didn't see in the video, is we have plastic pellets as our starting material. Those pellets are fed into an extruder where those pellets are melted to create the plastic film. And to create that high temperature film, right, products could be impacted, especially temperature sensitive products. So what we've done is we've developed a proprietary temperature management system that really helps mitigate really what the products will see. So it really broadens the range of products that we can work on. And if you look at the chart on the bottom right, it's just a good visual. It's showing that you have your resin temperature, right? It's pretty high coming down, and then you have your drug solution temperature, and there's a spike momentarily as those two come together once the drug solution is being filled in the container at the start of the fill. So this is the traditional approach in this diagram. So what AppEject is working on is we're working to mitigate the temperature exposure on that initial fill. So as I mentioned, since these two barriers have been overcome, this allows us to support a broad range of products. These two technologies on their own, blow fill seal and injection molding, are not new. They've been around for a while, as we discussed, but combined together is really where we create the innovation. Okay, so we've had the opportunity to test out this technology on a variety of drug products at our facilities, ranging from small molecules to mRNA vaccines and to virus-like particles with lots of success. Because the blow-fill seal container is semi-permeable, we've also found it beneficial to package our blow-fill seal containers in a foil pouch, an over pouch just like this, to help preserve the stability of the products. Because the plastic material is semi-permeable, it allows exchange of gases. So by putting it into the foil over pouch, we can greatly support this diversity of products. Next, we're going to move on to the market served. So far we've discussed how the prefilled injector works, why it's not been done before, but where can this technology be applied? And I think what I'll do is I'll start over on the right-hand side with global health. One of our other co-founders, Mark Koska, he was the inventor of the K1 auto-disable syringe, and it was invented to prevent syringe needle reuse. And Mark is credited with saving millions of lives with his invention. So this new prefilled injector could play a role in global health by creating accessibility to this new unit dose system in a prefilled injector. In addition, having a unit dose container could help reduce drug waste. We've observed a lot of that in the global health space, especially when multi-dose vials are being used. Often, these multi-dose vials cannot be fully consumed, and that drug will be discarded. Lastly, for global health, specifically, having a smaller footprint with the BFS container. So here's an example of a pen, and here's the BFS container. You can see the size of that container. So you can say this is maybe a prefilled syringe, which typically has, the plunger rod and the needle sticking out that you have to store together. So this allows for more storage in a cold chain environment if there's a cold chain product such as a vaccine. And this is very advantageous in the global health world and third world countries where cold chain is at a premium. Secondly, I'll move on to the emergency response market. We think this could be a potential market, and AppEject was fortunate enough to be part of Operation Warp Speed. We were part of that because this technology can be used to support population scale production. In addition to the scale, the small and resilient supply chain, which I talked about, there's really only one starting material for this blow-fill seal container. So there's an ability to have a rapid response for any potential future bioemergencies. And lastly, commercial pharma. It could be served with this technology because it allows for differentiation. With different molds, you can have different customization of your design. And I think lastly, supporting our corporate ESG goals with the compact supply chain and very few materials. So we can go ahead and move on. So part two in this discussion, we're going to talk about the evolution and changing of market demands. So the market has evolved very much so. And if you go back to the 70s and just look at the consumable market, if you look at the soda market, we've seen a change from glass bottles to plastic bottles. And basically it's for a few reasons. It's the handling, the durability, it's a lot lighter. So plastic weighs about 10 times less than glass. And from a manufacturer perspective, transportation and even the grocery stores, then even for your kids, going to school, imagine them carrying around plastic bottles. And it's also recyclable. So we've seen that journey. And as we move on in our timeline, if we go back to the pharmaceutical market into the 80s and 90s, there definitely was a transition, a journey from glass vials to prefilled syringes. And what drove that was it was a patient-centric format, right? There was a desire to not have to use these glass vials, but it also supported various commercial manufacturers in their market position and product lifecycle, increased dose accuracy, reduced waste, and basically allowed for fewer steps, which improved safety. Then as we go on our timeline further into the 90s and 2000s, as I prepared for this webinar, I ran across a product, and you can call it a case study. It was for a multiple sclerosis drug. And what I found fascinating about it was a lyophilized drug vial that was supplied in a kit. So within the kit, it had a lyophilized drug vial, it had a diluent vial, and it had an empty syringe. So you would use the diluent to reconstitute the lyophilized drug vial. Once that was reconstituted, you would use the empty syringe to withdraw that and prepare your injection. And what was interesting is that for this disease, it would require the patient to perform a self-injection daily. And when I was looking at the instructions for use or the package insert, there was 33 steps involved. I can only imagine the difficulty a patient is experiencing with all those steps. Very complicated. And after about 15 years or so, the innovator came out with a reformulated solution that allowed the injections to happen 3 times a week. And within this differentiation and reformulation, they also supplied an optional auto-injector. And this really caught my eye. I thought it was interesting. And as additional generic players came on the market, as I was researching this case study, I found a field alert by the FDA. And what the FDA was pointing out was that patients were not getting their complete dose, missed dose, failure to activate with the auto-injector. And the reason being is that once you had multiple vendors on the market, Company A's prefilled syringe did not fit in Company B's auto-injector. So there was an interchangeability issue. So definitely it was an undesired consequence. And the reason that I bring this up, this case study intrigued me because it screams that there's a need and an opportunity to drive towards simplicity, especially when we're looking at our users. So I'm going to move on to, we need to simplify the complex. And we believe that this plastic prefilled injector is the next evolution to simplify the complex. And if you look at the left-hand side of this slide, you can see the glass vial and the prefilled syringe. There's quite a few components required in that. You have the glass vial itself, you have the stopper, and you have the seal, the foil aluminum seal. And for the prefilled syringe, you have the added plunger, the stopper, and the siliconization process that's required in there. So definitely there's complexity built into those. And if you think about it, the elimination of these costly processes of vial and syringe procurement, holding that inventory, having to clean it, having to sterilize it, having a separate filling operation, and even a separate capping process, all can be accomplished with BFS in one single step. So we are projecting the evolution of plastic prefilled injectors for the future. And now I will start on the next slide. So why is it important to simplify the complex? So you can see in this chart, there's a lot of numbers here. I apologize for that. But really the global market for sterile fill finish products and prefilled injectables is expected to grow year over year 7%, which is wonderful. And the vaccines are the largest growth segment. And even the routes of administration of subcutaneous and intramuscular are growing the fastest. And if you look at the bottom right, if you look at the global sterile fill finish market, it's expected to grow from 79 billion in 2022 to 159 billion by 2032. So how's the industry going to keep up with these demands? I think blow-fill-seal technology and this prefilled injector can support and fill this growth and this gap that we could have in terms of supply chain. And coming fresh off the COVID-19 pandemic, basically, if we turn on one of these blow-fill-seal machines, we can produce 15 million units a month with one machine. So I'm curious, for those of you in the audience, have you experienced these supply chain issues? I'm guessing yes. We're hearing roughly anywhere from 12 to 18 months lead time for glass vials and syringes. So maybe you can let us know in the questions chat what you're seeing. Are you still experiencing these long delays in procuring starting materials? Okay, moving on. I'll turn it over to Lauren.
Thanks, Tony. So Tony told us about how simple this technology is compared to the glass auto-injector, on-body injector space, but it's not necessarily simple to take a novel product through development. So for those of you who have taken a medical device or combination product from concept to market, you may have expected to see a waterfall diagram depicting the FDA's design control process on this slide. The AppEject injector is a medical device constituent component of a drug-device combination product. Therefore, the development process does follow the design control process once the program enters the device development phase. What we are aiming to show here, though, is that the AppEject journey has been a highly iterative and agile one. AppEject has used learnings of our own, as well as those from several external resources. These include pharma partners, technology leaders, and other industry experts to ensure that we are bringing the right product to the market and that we have developed it right. So walking through this process, starting with ideation and innovation. It is important that any new technology be accepted by those that will eventually use the product. Everybody on this call, I'm sure, has a cell phone of some sort, whether that be a flip phone, an Apple iPhone, some sort of Samsung product. Basically, if you can picture walking into a cell phone store, if you pick up a certain device and it's not something that you find intuitive to use or easy to use, you likely will not buy it. You will not accept it. Healthcare is the same way. When we look at medical devices, particularly those that will go into the hands of any user, whether it be in the hospital or at home, if the technology is not understood and cannot be handled by that user group, it will not be accepted. So AppEject has been collecting several rounds of feedback from potential users of the device. I am showing a summary of one of these studies on the current slide. In this study, healthcare professionals were asked a series of questions when comparing the AppEject injection system to other injection systems on the market. Results were very promising. We saw 80 to 90% of healthcare professionals feeling that the AppEject system was preferable when it came to many of the factors. So some of those include wastage and expiration. So essentially ensuring that any remaining doses in a vial would not get wasted. Ease of disposal, just as simple as syringes or other devices that are thrown into a sharps waste bin. Additionally, storage space, which Tony had touched on a bit earlier, particularly when it comes to refrigerated systems. So AppEject is a medical technology company. The AppEject injector that we have been showing you today is a single version of a potential future technology. Another area where AppEject is seeking to solicit feedback is from potential pharma partners who may have their own specific needs and use cases. As a pharma partner, you guys would know your user population the best. So once we have defined a need and a use case, we can then move on to some prototyping and design. So on the screen currently, I'm showing a few iterations of our device from the beginning until present. With these devices, these are all meant to give up to a 1 ml intramuscular dose. So the needle I showed earlier may have looked a little bit large on the screen, but it is intended to go into that intramuscular space. So with this technology, Tony did talk about our Orlando Development Center a little bit earlier on. One of the challenging things to prototype is the BFS container. In our video, you saw that there were quite a few molds coming together to form containers. The equipment you were looking at had approximately 25 molds across, and then multiple sets of those molds in the rotary piece of equipment. So AppEject has built capability in our Orlando site to help us to more quickly prototype BFS containers on a smaller scale. So some of the key reasons we have continued to iterate and design and develop is because of manufacturability, some of the test results that we've seen, as well as feedback from our human factors studies. Human factors has triggered a few key iterations, including reduction of the number of components that are involved in the device, as well as the number of steps that a user would be required to perform prior to delivering a dose. Additionally, we've done quite a bit of benchtop testing. This has triggered some design and dimensional changes. We've wanted to optimize performance, particularly forces for assembly and squeezing of the device, which I'll talk about a little bit more in the next slide. Finally, manufacturing. This has been optimized to improve both efficiencies in manufacturing as well as cost for our customers. So once we have a design that we feel comfortable with, we will take that into the design control process and into device development. One of the key aspects of the design control process is to essentially set requirements. AppEject does do this per design controls and the FDA's Code of Federal Regulations. So these design inputs show a range of examples of things that you would find in our design inputs document. It's not all inclusive, but as I spoke of earlier, one component of the AppEject injection system is the hypodermic needle, which is at the front of my assembled device right here. In this case, we are ensuring that we meet and set certain design inputs that are standard for devices such as this in the market, or really any hypodermic needle. So ISO 7864 for sterile hypodermic needles outlines requirements for the bond between the needle tube and hub, for needle length and tolerances on that, patency of the lumen, ensuring that there are no obstructions to allowing the drug to be delivered, as well as a few other key attributes. It would be expected that any hypodermic needle entering the market would meet these requirements, so we must too. The same thing goes for biocompatibility, which is my second example. It is important that any materials selected that will be in contact with humans are safe for such exposure. This means the needle that is going into a patient, as well as any plastic that is being handled by an end user to give that injection. On the blue fill seal side, just like any pre-filled vial or syringe, it would be expected that AppEject be able to meet the requirements of USP 788 and 790. For those who are not familiar with those standards, these are standards for the amount of subvisible or visible particulate in the fluid within a container, so limiting the amount of external contaminant that may be injected. Other requirements, however, are not as easy to set and more difficult to define. So Tony noted earlier that we are not a pre-filled syringe. We don't have a barrel, we don't have a plunger or a rod, finger flanges. We don't have somebody using their thumb to essentially advance that plunger rod forward. Therefore, we've needed to define forces to perform similar activities with this product, such as attachment of the needle to the BFS, as well as the squeeze force to inject the fluid into somebody's body. So for these, we've highly relied upon anthropometric data to ensure that the force required to activate the syringe or the device is less than the force required to activate the device is less than the force that a user can apply. So when we look at the last example that I have here for delivered volume, this is a requirement where we have set requirements based on industry standards again. So we have put bounds on the lower level of delivery to be not less than the labeled volume. This comes from ISO 11608-1 and is fairly standard for drug delivery platforms. But when it comes to other parameters on tolerances of delivery, We are really looking for input from pharma customers for a particular drug product. So as of now, with water-filled injections for testing purposes, we are using bounds based on typical overfill on vials. We would like to keep our overfill within that tolerance for our system. However, again, we will take any input that a pharma partner has for their particular user group or drug. So moving into our last part of our development process, once we have set requirements and we have come up with a design that we believe will meet those requirements, we essentially will want to assess the device to ensure that we meet the requirements set. So a key element of the BFS specifically is that the product is the process. What do I mean by that? There is no product like a vial where one company ships the vial to a third party or a drug manufacturer to then subsequently fill and finish that vial. In this case, the container is filled in the same step as where it is filled and sealed. So therefore, the product must be designed and assessed with a strong understanding of that process. The FDA does recognize BFS as an advanced aseptic process. So from a risk control standpoint, the closed ISO 5 environment in which the containers are formed, filled, and sealed helps to control risk related to particulate. Additionally, the use of a single pharmaceutical grade material helps to control other contaminants that may be extracted into the drug product. Even with these risk controls, design verification and process validation are helpful in ensuring that risks are appropriately assessed and controlled. On the process side, AppEject is utilizing a combination of existing and newly developed technologies and methods for 100% inline automated inspection for defects that impact device performance. Some of these include container integrity, particulate, and cosmetic defects. All sampling as part of process validation as well as design verification does follow a risk-based approach. So for any of you on the call that may be thinking, how do I take my drug from a vial to a combination product? I'm going to talk through some of the considerations you may want to have. So I'm going to start with the conclusion. Don't guess. The FDA does encourage discussion early in your process. AppEject is engaging in such discussions with the FDA currently and would expect this to continue as we start to work with pharma partners on their drugs. Pharmaceutical partners should consider several of these factors. These include the intended user groups, patient populations, what volume is required to be delivered, and what viscosity might that formulation be. Also, who is going to be doing the delivery and who is going to be receiving that delivery. So with regards to development of the pharmaceutical product within a BFS, compatibility of the drug with the material or process must be considered. So basically, when we say the product or the process, the materials of construction, just like a vial, it would be expected that a pharma partner does stability studies over time with a drug in that material. Additionally, as Tony had described earlier, we have developed a process for controlling temperature as part of the fill finish process. But in terms of processing your drug through any tubing or any process, it's important to give that a try and make sure that there are no unintended consequences of that process. On the regulatory pathway side of things, it should be considered to ensure that the correct studies be performed during the assessment phase, whether those be clinical, design verification studies, or any bridging studies for the drug product that have already been performed. So I guess with that, Tony, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, maybe I can jump in here real quick. I think, when delving into a potential new program, especially with the combination product, it can be challenging at times. But, when you look at this AppEject injector technology, it's new, but we can definitely test drive a drug or run a feasibility study in the new container system. And there's various ways to do that. We can fill empty blow fill seal containers. We can run it through our process. We can do a stability run. We can look for material compatibility. There's various options to explore this avenue. And we can also definitely help navigate any regulatory complexities in a potential container change. So If you're on the market today and you're experiencing market erosion in a drug vial, maybe there's an opportunity for differentiation, right? So we can help navigate and support any potential, pharmaceutical customers out there with that change. Okay, let's move on. So in this slide here, really what you see is that the AppEject injector technology, it's not just what Lauren showed, it's not just that 1 ml intramuscular injector, it's a platform technology using interlocking components. And you can see in the table below in the chart that it's a modular approach and we can create novel products. So as I mentioned in the prior slide, not only if you're changing from one presentation to another, but if you want to develop something new, this is something that we can do with this technology. So this brings us to the end. So in conclusion, I hope you are excited about the potential of this new technology and the next generation of prefilled injectors that utilize blow-fill-seal technology. I hope you learned why it's not been done before. We shared high-level development approach that we have and our experiences as well as key considerations when going down a device development path. Lauren and I want to thank everyone for their time. I will now turn it over back to our moderator, Sonia, for the final poll question, and then we'll move on to the Q&A section.
Firstly, I'd like to say thank you very much to Tony and Lauren for that very engaging presentation. I hope everyone enjoyed it. And just like Tony said, I'm going to launch our final poll question here before we get into the Q&A, and you should see it appear on your screen, and there it is. So the question that we have for you is, what type of product would you imagine in an AppEject plastic prefilled injector? Is it a small molecule, monoclonal antibodies, virus-like particle vaccine, mRNA vaccine, or recombinant proteins? So please go ahead and make your selection from the below. And I'll leave this open for a few more seconds so that way we can get everyone participating in this real-time poll question. And I'm just looking here now to see that we do have the majority of our audience members have cast their votes. I'll leave it open for a few more seconds just for the few of you there who have not. Okay, that looks like it's almost everyone. Perfect. Thank you everyone for participating in our final poll question. I'm now going to share the results. Okay, so here are the results. In our audience, 50% said small molecule, while 0% said MABs, monoclonal antibodies, 0% for virus-like particular vaccine, but we have 33% saying mRNA vaccine, and then 17% said recombinant proteins. So thank you everyone for participating in those two poll questions. Now I'll invite our speakers, Tony and Lauren, to put on their webcam and we'll get into the Q&A. But before we get into the Q&A, Tony and Lauren, I'm just thinking, I'm actually curious, what are your thoughts about the results of that poll question? Anything there that was surprising to you for poll question 1 or 2?
Yeah, I think for number 1, poll question 1 about the pain points, we definitely expected supply chain to be number 1. I actually thought cost of materials would come in number 2. So I was a little surprised with the FDA review times challenges, but it makes sense. And I'll just reiterate from what you heard in the presentation too. Sometimes it's nice to simplify the complex, right? And so if your container and your injector system is simplified, your review process as well should go a little smoother. And maybe for the second one, yeah, definitely mRNA vaccines, with our COVID background, definitely, understanding that would be number 2. And small molecules, there's just such a broad variety. And I think with the cost efficiency of this injector system, it makes sense to me. Lauren, did you want to add anything?
No, Tony, I think I had some of the same takeaways as you did here. I know we've talked about this in the past.
Okay, all right. Well, with that,
thank you, Sonia.
No problem. Okay, now we'll get into the Q&A portion of the webinar. Now remember, audience members, you still can continue to send in your questions by using that questions window, and we'll try to answer your questions during this time that we've had together. So now, Tony and Lauren, while you were speaking, I did receive a bunch of questions that have come in from our audience members. So let me line them up and start with this first one. And this first one looks like it's for you, Tony. This audience member is asking, How do you handle the semi-permeable attributes of a plastic container for product shelf life?
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll take that one. I talked about it a little bit in the presentation, so maybe I'll expand on it. So
Hmm.
yeah, our BFS container is semi-permeable, right? And each drug solution that you put into the container is unique. So, we typically recommend performing some type of lab study or feasibility study, right? And we typically do it with an unpouched and pouched version. And what I mean by unpouched, it's basically the naked BFS container, looking like this. We'll put that on stability, as well as our pouched container, which we typically do in a foil pouch. And what happens is that the foil pouch helps mitigate the transmission of gases as well as moisture evaporation. And as you know, for semi-permeable containers, right, we need to follow ICH Q1A R2, right, the guidance for stability testing, where there's adjustments to relative humidity and there's a specification for moisture loss over time. And I'll add as well, foil pouching or over pouching a semi-permeable container is very common in the blow fill seal industry, as well as other injectable products. I would even compare it to maybe IV bags. If you've handled some of those, there's usually a clear secondary overwrap or even a foil overwrap as well.
Hmm.
So very common to that. And it really helps prevent moisture evaporation and gas exchange. Maybe one more thing I'll mention here is, we've looked at other products and we've had feedback that there's very sensitive products to oxygen. So AppEject has the capability to utilize nitrogen blanketing or purging to help vacate that oxygen in that foil over pouch, and that would help extend the shelf life of that product. Hopefully I answered that question.
That was very thorough. I'm going to jump to the next question here. Oh, this question looks like it's for you, Lauren. What is the hold-up volume of the AppEject injector? They're asking you.
Yeah, that is a great question. Ultimately, I'm not able to provide data in this forum, but I did speak earlier about some of our specifications, one of which was for delivered volume. If you think about delivered volume and holdup volume, they're essentially the inverse of one another. One gets delivered, one gets left behind. So AppEject has looked at holdup volume as something that we would like to, say, minimize. This is done in a few ways, both the design of the BFS container as well as the needle. Anytime you have two pieces coming together, any space in the design around those components that cannot be injected, we have worked to minimize that amount of space. Additionally, in the container, looking at how the fluid, say, flows from one side of the container to the other, minimizing any area where that fluid could get held up. But also on the drug side of things, I think we have to keep in mind that there are fluid properties that may impact something like holdup volume. For example, the surface tension or the viscosity of the fluid. So AppEject has performed testing with water and a few other fluids, and I'm hesitant to give those answers, but we do look at the standards relating to delivered volume and are able to hit those requirements.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer, Lauren. I'll jump to the next question now. This audience member sent this question in, and they're asking, do you have any products approved by the FDA? Who would like to answer that one?
I'll take that one.
Okay.
So the short answer is no, we don't have anything approved yet. But we recently had a meeting with the FDA, a dialogue, talking about our AppEject injector and what's the fastest path to approval. So as Lauren mentioned in her slide, don't guess, be fully engaged with the FDA. It helps smooth things out. But what I can tell you, what I can share, is we have two programs currently on track for US and European submission in Q2, Q3 2024, and many more development projects in the pipeline.
Okay, sounds very active over there. Okay, I'll jump to the next question here. Can you tell us more about the temperature management capabilities? That's another interesting question. Who would like to jump in with that one?
I think that one would be me.
Okay, Lauren, thanks.
That's another difficult question. Tony did talk a bit earlier about some of the curves that we are trying to map and trace. However, when it comes to the specific changes to equipment, that is considered proprietary by AppEject. So in terms of looking at your, say, drug development, I did speak a little bit earlier about container and drug compatibility, but also to reemphasize, drug process compatibility is also important. We do have equipment in our Orlando site that is capable of running some feasibility studies with drug product to look at those interactions between the equipment and the drug product and see if there are any detrimental effects.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Lauren. All right, we'll jump to the next question here. How is AppEject managing extractable and leachables?
I think that one's also me.
Yeah,
That's you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
some questions for Anthony, for
maybe
Tony,
I'll
please.
start by explaining a little bit about the difference between extractables and leachables, because I find when talking to folks, those are often used as a single term. So extractables are essentially chemical compounds that migrate from a container or primary packaging, for example, vials, stoppers, seals, into a specific drug, or sorry, into solvent solutions. So these studies are performed using a lot of worst case scenarios where variables such as temperature, pH, time are intentionally basically changed and challenged. So these are often also exaggerated further than what a drug product would see in real life. The point of this study is really to understand every single thing that could come out of a container. Leachables, on the other end, are studies performed with a specific drug and the primary packaging in mind. Here, we do not push the conditions quite as far. They keep the conditions more in terms of what a typical drug product would see. And here, we basically see what actually comes out of the container into that drug. So the extractables data can be used almost as a map or a fingerprint to help identify the compounds that end up in a drug from leachables testing. So AppEject has performed extractable profiles on the BFS material that makes up our container. And we've seen a really low extractables profile, which is great, but also probably a bit expected. If you think about the differences in materials between a BFS and a vial containment system or a prefilled syringe, we have many fewer components as part of the design. So we have a single material as opposed to multiple materials and potentially silicone coatings in other systems. So if you as a drug partner would be performing your own leachable study, AppEject would be able to support in terms of that extractables profile.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer there, Lauren. I'll jump to the next question. Oh, here's one for you, Tony. They listened. This person wants to know, how does the cost compare to a pre-filled syringe, Tony?
Okay. Yeah, I was kind of expecting this one. Cost, it's difficult to talk about here. It's very dependent, though, on unit volume and packaging configurations. But I think I can give some ballpark information. So I would say on average, we're about half the cost of a prefilled syringe and maybe more on par with the glass vials in the industry, while providing, that safety and ease of use convenience of a prefilled syringe. So when we have discussions about cost with potential customers, something that we uncover and we're hearing is there's this lost market opportunity. And it's related to the poll question. It's related to supply chain lead times. Also, if a potential customer is looking to go to a CDMO, oftentimes to get line time, we're hearing, more than 12 months. So you have to take that into account as well when you're putting this together. But I think the AppEject injector value proposition, we are very cost effective.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Tony.
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere. It looks like another question's here for you. During the injection process, if the squeeze force is released, is there a chance of bodily fluids coming back through the needle?
Okay, interesting question there. So what I would say with that is, we are innovating, bringing something very new to the market, right? It's potentially disruptive and it's changing practices for healthcare practitioners as well. So our instructions for use is going to have, once you finish the dose, you're squeezing it, and the dose is complete, then you maintain that squeeze as you withdraw the blow-fill seal injector with the needle out of the patient's arm, and that'll prevent that issue.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Tony. Looking at the AppEject prototype, this audience member is asking, the dose accuracy seems to be dependent on squeeze force, which is fully a manual process. How is this design validated to assure complete dose delivered from AppEject?
I can take that one.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, AppEject does perform both design verification and validation type testing on the system. I'd say that when it comes to dose accuracy and specifically squeeze forces, we do use an instron to measure the squeeze forces of a container. When it comes to expelling fluid from any sort of system involving a needle, things like viscosity of the drug product impact, say, the speed of delivery or the amount of force it's going to take to push that fluid through the needle. So when it comes to the squeeze force specifically, I was going to say we have done studies to vary squeeze forces, delivery rate, and resulting dose accuracy. We do still see the full dose being delivered, but obviously if the viscosity is super high, it's going to take a little bit more force to expel that fluid through the needle.
Okay, and another quick one here again, and this is for you, Lauren. This audience member is asking, is the technology capable of filling more than 1 milliliter of solution dose of product in a pre-filled syringe?
So yeah, I can answer that one.
Okay.
The injector that we showed today has a fill volume up to 1 ml. It doesn't mean necessarily that the technology cannot go above that. It's just what this design is specifically aimed as a maximum volume for delivery. So BFS technology, I think, Tony, you've given a couple examples of, say, eyedropper containers or other sorts of systems. There are systems that are much larger than 1 ml. I would envision that we could develop something above that value, but the current system is up to 1 ml only.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. Well, thank you very much for those questions. We have reached the end of the Q&A portion of the webinar. If we couldn't attend to your questions, the team will follow up with you after this presentation. And if you have any further questions, please direct them to the email addresses that are on your screen. And there's one there for Tony and Lauren. Thank you for participating in today's webinar. You will be receiving a follow-up email from X-Talks with access to the recorded archive for this event. A survey window will be popping up on your screen. Your participation is appreciated as it will help us to improve on our further webinars. Now, give me a few seconds. I'm about to send you a link in your chat box, and you will be able to view the recording of this event with that link, and also share this link with your colleagues once they register for the recording as well. And if you want to learn more about AppEject's flexible design platform and easy-to-use products, please visit them at www.appeject.com, and I'll put that link in that chat box in a few seconds. So I encourage you to do that. Now, please join us in thanking our speakers, Lauren and Tony, for that very insightful presentation and for answering all our questions. So thank you very much, Tony and Lauren. There they are.
You're welcome. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. We hope you found this webinar informative. It has been my pleasure to be your webinar moderator. On behalf of the team here at X-Talks, we thank you for joining us. I'm Sonia Hunt. Until next time, please take care and bye for now. Bye, everyone. Bye, Tony. Bye, Lauren. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
us. Thank you.